Welcome to the Ostinato video tutorial series. I'm Srivatsa P, creator of Ostinato. Today's tutorial is about the Ostinato device emulation feature. Let's look at this test topology. Here we have a network with 4 routers, the edge routers connected to the Ostinato traffic generator. This network of 4 routers is our network under test, and we want to send traffic to one of the edge routers and verify that we receive it back from the other edge router. If you look at the IP addresses in the diagram, you'll see that one of the edge routers is in the 100.1.1/24 subnet and the other is in the 200.1.1 subnet. So our network under test is expected to route the traffic from one subnet to another subnet, and that is what we will verify. Look at the IP addresses on the Ostinato end. You'll see each port on Ostinato has multiple IP addresses. That's because we want to emulate 10 devices on each of the 100 and 200 subnets. That is something like this. For this tutorial, however, I'm going to replace the network under test with a single router. That is, instead of a network under test, we have a device under test. From an Ostinato point of view, it does not matter what is under test here. A network, a cloud, or a single router, as long as it routes from the 100 subnet to the 200 subnet and vice versa. Before we start configuring Ostinato, note that Ostinato port 1 is connected to ETH1 on the router and Ostinato port 10 is connected to ETH2 on the router. I have already configured IP addresses on ETH1 and ETH2 on the router. Let me show you that. In Ostinato, let's select port 1, go to Devices tab and create a device group. Double-click to configure it. Let's call it subnet 100, name is optional here. We want 10 devices with IPv4, address starting 100.1.1.11. Note that Ostinato has automatically assigned a MAC address. You can change it if you want, but I don't need to do that here. Also note that Ostinato assigned a default gateway IP address 100.1.1.1, which matches the IP address assigned to ETH1 on the router, which is what we want. Ostinato will typically use .1 of the IP address as the gateway. If your gateway has a different IP, change it to the actual gateway IP address. Of course, the gateway needs to be in the same subnet. Click Apply and then select Information. You'll see there are 10 devices created. Actually, there are 11. This one here is a host device, which I'll explain in another video, so let's ignore it for now. So the 10 devices created are 100.1.1.11 to 20 with no VLANs, only IPv4, no IPv6, and default gateway of 100.1.1.1. Let's repeat the same on port 10 for the 200 subnet devices. Now that the devices are configured, let's configure the traffic streams. Back to port 1, which is the 100 subnet, go to the Streams tab and create a new stream. I'm selecting the protocols Ethernet, IPv4, UDP. Go to the Protocol Data tab. I want you to note that the MAC address is set as resolve for both the source and destination. We don't want to change that, just make sure it is set to that. Go to IPv4 and enter the IP addresses. Source as 100.1.1.11, increment host for 10 counts. Destination as 200.1.1.11, increment host for 10 counts. Next we go to Stream Control tab, set packet rate as 100 packets per second, and set the stream to loop infinitely. If you're wondering how go to first will loop infinitely, it's because this stream is the first and only stream. Click Apply and repeat the same on port 10 for the 200 subnet streams. With that done, we are all set. Time to run some traffic. Let's clear the stats first and then click on Transmit. Port 1 shows frame send rate as 100 pps, and that is the receive rate on port 10. Port 10 shows frame send rate as 200 pps, and that is the receive rate on port 1. Looks like our traffic test is a success. Let's look at the traffic rates on the router. The rates on the router match what we're sending from Ostinato. Let's capture some packets and take a look. Notice that the capture includes both sent and received packets. Let's look at a packet sent by Ostinato first. See that the source MAC and destination MAC address are populated and the TTL value is 127, the default TTL value set by Ostinato. Now let's take a look at a received packet. This is a packet that Ostinato received from the router. For a received packet, the TTL has reduced by 1 to 126 just as expected. We have now verified that the traffic test is a success using the packet trace on Ostinato, packet rates at the router, and using a packet capture to verify packet content. One question you may have is how do we associate which stream belongs to which device? You don't need to specify this association. Ostinato does this automatically based on the source IP address. So if your stream has a source IP address 100.1.1.15, it will be associated with a device that has the same IP address. Note that this association is not 1:1. In our case, we have one stream which generates packets from all the 10 emulated devices. So it's not a stream which is associated with the device, it is a packet that is associated with the device. I want to show you a couple of other things related to device emulation. First is how to look at the ARP table for the emulated devices. Select the port Devices tab, and if we scroll through here to the ARP column, we see 0 of 0 resolved. Now that doesn't seem correct, so let me refresh, and now we see 1 of 1. If we click on this, we will see the ARP table for that particular device. Each device has its own ARP table. We can clear the ARP table for the emulated devices and resolve it again. Now if you're wondering why we did not need to click on Resolve Neighbors earlier, that's because starting with Ostinato version 1.0, when you click Apply, Ostinato will internally do a Resolve Neighbor so that you don't have to. Sometimes though you will find that the ARP resolution fails when clicking Apply, so you might want to manually do a Resolve Neighbors in that case. ARP resolution failures will be reported in the logs window here. Let's go back to the configuration and go to the device group. We didn't use VLAN tags for this tutorial, but if you want, you could. Also, we use IPv4, but you could use IPv6 or a dual stack or no IP at all. We just saw ARP table on Ostinato. We can also see the ARP table on the router. When the router sends a ARP request, Ostinato responds with ARP reply for the emulated devices, and that's how the router populates its ARP table. Finally, let's look at ping. If from the router we ping any of the emulated devices, Ostinato will reply to those. For this tutorial, we used a DUT which was a router. You could use a switch instead if you want to verify bridging or EVPN or any other layer 2 technology. You create a similar topology as what you saw here, but instead of 2 subnets, just configure a single subnet on both sides but with different IP ranges. Here's a quick recap on how to do Ostinato device emulation. First, create a device group specifying the device count, IP stack, IP address range, and the gateway IP. Then create a stream populating the source and destination IP and ensuring that the source and destination MAC address are set to resolve. Let me know your questions and feedback in the comment section. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that the comment section is closed. That's because the comments are enabled on the blog post that accompanies this video. Follow the URL in the video description to head there. Also, do let me know what other Ostinato tutorials would you like to see.